Hwnna waste of ink, yn doedd? Diolch yn fawr iawn. I rei o'n chi sydd yn...
Thank you, Chair. For so those who are live streaming, you're joining us now. We've started down. Our first item was a secret ballot to elect a chair. So welcome to you here. I can confirm that we have the results, and Edgar has been successful. So welcome to the chair, Edgar.
Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd.
I'd like to thank you all for voting for me. We'll move on to item 2, the election of a vice chair of the authority. Once again, a number of nomination names have been put forward. There won't be an election. Councillor Ifor Glyn has been successful. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on. Are there any apologies? No apologies. Corporate update from the Chief Executive. Thank you. Congratulations, Edgar, and thank you, Tim, for his work over the past 6 months. Just in brief, Tim, myself went at the meeting with Julie James on Monday. The main message is there. What finance was still quite tight now, and it will be until 2025. Discussions have started with for capital support for the parks for the next 3 years, and she mentioned a few things that will be included in the next manifesto, Labour's next manifesto, and management of national parks and fire surface. They want to review on this. And Audit Wales item is on the agenda today to discuss this. We've Edgar chaired applications, and they will be reported further on in the agenda as well. Just like to remind members that there's a class on a bulk board which is open to all members to receive presentations as we move forward on this, and that will be this afternoon. An agent has been appointed to sell the plus as another option. A consultation period on Article 4 has come to an end. Received about 400 responses, which is different to the 4,000 that Gwynedd received. So we'll be analysing this feedback, and we'll report back at the end of the summer on these. I'd just like to remind members as well that there'll be a members development day in June, and we will go to the Bala area. And also training for members on finance. Programme has been drawn up by Welsh Government on the 20th of June online. And as a management team and vice chair have met with Cymdeithas Eryri. We haven't met for about a year or a year and a half, really. So it was great to rekindle that relationship. And Tim and myself went up to Loch Lomond last week to meet the chairs of the other packs, and it's very beneficial. There are benefits to meeting face to face, and the main discussion point was climate change and how we move as a group of 15 packs to tackle this. In regards to my work, I met with the Chief Constable North Wales, which was very productive. There are discussions ongoing to appoint a policeman in the national parks to help the rural community. So we're working on that as officers at the moment. And the 3 chief executives in the parks in Wales have met with Claire Pillman last month. And the main discussion points were cooperating and sharing expertise between bodies, since the resources were becoming more restricted. Since there is quite a the Lake District have just appointed a new chief executive, Gavin Capstick. I've worked with him before, and I'm sure he'll do very well in the park and in the national park family. And this is my last annual general meeting, but more importantly for you as members, Anwen Gaffey will be retiring at the end of the summer. She was with us since before the authorities. So I'd like to thank you, Anwen, for all your work, and a happy retirement to you. Wish you a happy retirement. Okay, we'll move on to. There's one question. A question from. I'm afraid I can't hear very well.
Sorry, the translator can't hear.
Can't hear you. There's one. Thank you. And now they're on mute, so I definitely can't hear. Right. I'll start for the third time. I switched the mic off, I'm afraid. We have one question asked by Richard Chiris. You can stand, or you can sit. You can sit, so you can stand.
Changing translators now. And you've got up to
There'll be
20
up to
minutes
20 minutes to ask the question and respond to it.
To ask the question and also for a suitable response to be given. So I will be timing. Right.
What about everybody? I hope you'll forgive us. I need to give a short preface to the question. I hope of even keeping within 2 degrees C upper guardrail temperature of the 2015 Paris Agreement is really rapidly being lost. These beguiling single figures global average prescriptions really prefigure human and planetary experience of really gross climatic extremes and impacts. Even that 2 degrees centigrade guardrail, that upper guardrail, is no longer considered safe. And the majority of climate scientists now believe we may be on track for an average global heating temperature rise approaching 3 degrees by 2010, by the end of the century, 2100. This will be catastrophic for many parts of the world and would impact Wales if it's unprepared. Globally, 2030 renewables targets are way off track. Substantial investment and development to increase oil and gas production around the world continues apace. This year, they are building thousands and thousands of kilometres of pipelines. So you can get a clue about where we're going. The world has experienced record temperatures this year. UK has had its warmest May on record. And closer to home, the Glasgow catchment winter rainfall is once again, as it has been in recent years, more than 140% above the previous 30-year average. The Committee on Climate Change reports already the strong evidence of biodiversity in Wales being severely impacted by climate change. 2019, Wales declares a climate emergency. In 2021, Wales declares a nature emergency. Front cover of the Gwynedd Council's Climate and Nature Emergency Plan shows a familiar green landscape. And quite possibly this was unintentionally chosen because sadly that portrays actually a landscape seriously ecologically degraded. Across the national park, there are indeed some wonderful hotspots and niches of biodiversity. But in large part, it is an ecologically suboptimal, degraded landscape with currently weak potential to enable its ecosystems to adapt to the future vagaries of climatic and ecological impacts. Across North West Wales, a large proportion of notifiable habitat is in unfavourable or unknown condition. The situation can only be addressed systematically with drive. Current younger generations and future ones are now faced with a gross injustice of inheriting this degrading landscape. Our familiar Welsh landscape has to be modified if its overall ecological connectivity and biodiversity is to have any chance of resilience against the future stresses of higher levels from global heating and local climatic change. The younger generation has no choice in the direction of travel, but the generation currently in control do have a choice about moderating the pace of travel. And the chance starts by acknowledging the need for landscape scale climate change adaptation and what that means. Reforestation is key to how the landscape needs to change also. At close to about 15% forest cover, Wales is one of the least wooded countries in Europe. The national park is about 17%. The EU averages about 37%, with countries like Germany and France, whilst they have much higher gross population densities than Wales. The Committee on Climate Change suggests forest cover in Wales should be increased to 21% by 2050. That is a strikingly unambitious target, even given the gross population densities in Wales. Ecological spatial planning is needed to help drive increase in this forest cover. Beyond ecosystem restoration, reforestation within the landscape of Wales could be highly beneficial to economic development in expanding local availability and diversity of employment through transitioning to climate resilient agricultural diversification in agroecology and agroforestry, and not least in helping the expansion of the Welsh commercial forestry sector. The National Park Authority, through a capacity for ecological spatial planning, would inform opportunities for farming diversity, which is absolutely crucial, and of course, help grow a sustainable regional forest industry. At the current rate of tree planting in Wales, even the albeit weak 2050 target would not be achieved until well into the 22nd century. Real hope of ramping up action depends upon appropriate species in ecological suitable locations. Ecological networks is so important for this. Currently in Wales, only 10% of assessed woodland habitat features are in favourable condition. Significant increases in ecologically sustainable reforestation are a crucial aspect of landscape scale climate adaptation. For example, it requires greater density of forestry along river corridors to keep rivers and their habitat cool, and also as a long-term nature-based solution to mitigating flood risk. And the grassland is a good example of this. Sufficient imperative for ecosystem conservation and reforestation across the national park is not likely to be driven without a development of a specific national park strategic spatial planning and ecosystems and climate change document. There is no substitute for developing ecological spatial planning, one that underpins a programmed rationale of developing action across extended timescales in concert with all stakeholders. My last paragraph. Citizen science, as a recent widespread monitoring work on the wide catchment, is an excellent example, has shown it is not only cost effective and inclusive, it is also a huge potential to enable substantial development of improved fine-grained flora and fauna data sets for our national park, which are really desperately needed to give that understanding. And with virulent climate change, citizen science can offer a vital, engaging role for the younger generation, as well as some hope. An ecological spatial planning system and management processes are essential if long-term proactive measures are to be developed and implemented on a timescale that can sufficiently anticipate the spatial and land use changes. But there is an ever-closing window of opportunity to put in train measures which themselves may be quite long-term in order to mitigate for even foreseeable worst-case scenarios. And so I'll just state my question. The question, will the National Park Authority seriously consider taking steps to begin to establish the means to exercise proactive ecological spatial planning and which could ultimately develop a park-wide strategic strategic ecosystem conservation and landscape scale adaptation management plan, complete with defined measures subject to periodic review, recognizing there is great potential for early mobilization of resources by way of local and regional stakeholder engagement through exploiting university research and harnessing that and developing citizen science programs, but also by exploring partnership working with Banal Brycheiniog National Park Authority, which produced recovery, a preliminary national recovery plan in July 2019. Just as a coda, I want to stress what happened in December 2022. That was the equivalent of the Paris Agreement. That gives a global framework. And these gave rise to a whole series of targets. And this is really crucial for moving forward. So that is my question. And I'm not expecting a comprehensive reply to this. I'm just, the thing I would stress upon, will the National Park consider what I'm asking?
Diolch yn fawr. Reit. John and Mindy. After the
Thank
question.
you very much. I think that John is going to answer that question.
In Welsh. So if you will need your translation equipment to understand the response.
Yeah, diolch am y cwestiwn.
Thank you for the question. It is definitely a very important matter, and we are taking these things seriously as officers and as an authority. We've discussed a lot of these issues many times, and I think the simple answer is yes, it is something that we need to consider and discuss further, and I'm sure that we will be doing so over the next weeks and months. In the context of some of the limitations we're dealing with that are important to understand with regard to this work. The first thing, maybe these are obvious points, but it's important to raise them all the same. With the restrictions, we need to understand that we're not the same as every other park. It's in private ownership to start with. So the ability for us to change things directly is limited. We've got to work with partners to deliver on these things. That's the way we work. We work very closely with the agricultural sector and the land managers and so on. Resources is something else that's important. We've only got so much money and staff. So again, to deliver the things you've raised, we have to do that jointly with partners. We do a lot of this ourselves, naturally, and we need to continue with that work. But side by side with the farmers, unions, and other partners in the environmental sector as well, such as Natural Resources Wales, National Trust, and so on. So it's important to understand the context. With regard to what we're doing already, I think we are on this journey already. As a coincidence, we're actually presenting a carbon strategy to the authority here today. So there are areas in that strategy that will partly at least answer your question. So the carbon strategy that the committee will hear about today will talk about upgrading the carbon challenge in the corporate plan. It talks about the need for us to upgrade the ambition with regards to carbon. And the Cynllun Eryri is reviewed next year. And the preparatory work for Cynllun Eryri, which includes a report on the condition of the park, will be similar to the point that you're making about having a scheme across the park. That work is happening now. We've commissioned private consultants, and they're doing a piece of work on the condition of the park, and lots of working with other partners such as NRW and CADU, RSPB, National Trust. We work with all these bodies to understand what the baseline is with regards to the condition and nature and how we respond to that and our ability to reduce carbon emissions and greenhouse gases, as well as the review of Cynllun Eryri. The local development plan is also reviewed next year. So again, that's very timely. And that preparatory work will start later on this year. So there will be policies that have an ambition to address these going in next year. And possibly the last part, that's within the carbon strategy, that we're now part of the Race to Zero, not an organization, but a body that has loads of people subscribing up to it, looking at exactly the same things you discussed there. So the priority now, although we're talking about targets for 2050, the need to act is now, and it also pushes us to go towards the target of less than 1.5 increase rather than 2 in degrees Celsius. So that's something we're committed to that principle as we're part of the Race to Zero. So the tools are there to deal with the question. It's a complex area. I was part of preparing the carbon strategy, and it was quite an eye-opener, really, the complexity of everything and where we're going, the direction of travel, and what the partners are doing as well. Everybody's doing lots of different things. So coordinating this is important. So that's something we need to keep an eye on. And also trying to save some money to create a post which will look at reducing carbon. Hopefully, that job will be in place sometime this year. So that shows the authorities' ambition to respond to these issues. I hope that that's given you some context as to what we do. Doesn't answer your question directly, but I think it shows you that we're on the same page and that we're going in the same kind of direction. But we need to do it with partners and with landowners as well. We can't go without them. So working together is really important in this. Sorry, I've taken a lot of the 20 minutes, but I thought it was such a big question. Thank you. Yes, John said that it is a complex area, and obviously it is. Just to add, we're looking at carbon based on consumption. So we've got an understanding now of where the carbon comes from. A third of the Eryri carbon emissions come from transport, a third from the gases, I think, and a third from local communities. We are looking at a tree strategy to control carbon, and we're looking at very ambitious plans with restoring nature and the resilience of the ecosystem. There's some Celtic countries trees. Because I'm here today, there's a paper on the agenda of the local service board in Môn and Gwynedd, based on the work that we've done as an authority to deal with carbon, and it's on the main work streams of the local service boards, and it'll be on the transport, economy and planning work across North Wales. So there's several ways into this. There is a technical problem with the ability of national parks to do a lot of this work, because there have been gaps in the legislation, which means that we're not responsible for everything in the area. In the meeting with Julie James, we raised this. There's a legislative slot in the next Senedd to look at the purpose of national parks. And we need more powers. They have been invested in other bodies at the moment, so have the resources. But in the next term in the Senedd, hopefully that will change.
Gawn ni llai na 2 munud ar ôl.
2 minutes left of the 20 minutes, sorry. At the chair's discretion, we can allow a follow-up question. I don't know if you want to do that. I think it's such an important topic that we should.
By the way, I've got an additional question. Firstly,
Firstly, my background, I've gone through 2 rounds of river basin management planning. I've been a catchment flood management plan project manager. I have lots of quite a lot of experience in landscape restoration stuff. And I have a lot of experience around climate change, and so I've got quite a background. So if you want any informal contact, a brief discussion at any time, I'm at your service to just have a brief discussion. That's the one point. And the other point I would say, the data sets for the flora and the fauna, it's crucial that you develop these for the national park. Across Wales, they are not good enough. But if for a national park should be in the vanguard of where you're going, and I think you could learn something with think about a partnership with Bryn Cyniog about what's that doing. The ability of citizen science to deliver these data sets is cheap, is economical, and actually it gives a sense of purpose to local people, which is exactly what's happened in the Wye catchment. It's fantastic what we've done in the Wye catchment. So the potential is there to do cost-effective measures, but developing that understanding of the ecological connectivity is crucial. Crucial to landscape scale restoration.
Time's up. Thank you very much. So, do we know what that is going to Ivor?
Any members want to come in here? Yes. We've also started a discussion with Bangor University, and we're going to do some work with them in partnership for the way forward. Yeah, that's happening already to a certain extent. We work for the Centre for Hydrology and Ecology, but he's asking for data sets, and we can ask for those.
Could I just make the observation about citizen science? And I think that is something which we could probably give a little bit more consideration to on the back of the climate change work and the implementation of that. I think that's actually a very good point that's been made from my experience locally elsewhere, because there's a huge amount of expertise out there at a high level that could actually be mobilised in a structured way that would benefit us. How we get into that, I don't know, but I think that's discussion for another day. But I think we should look at it.
Thank you, Brian.
Ga I just adodd yn y cyfarfod efo Cymdeithas Eryri nes i.
Yes, in the meeting with Cymdeithas Eryri, one of the things we discussed was the science and using the members who've got the expertise to bring information to us. So we've started talking about that. Okay, if there's nobody else, then we'll go on to number 6, declarations of interest.
Iawn. Oes rywun?
Anything?
Iawn. Awn ni ymlaen i-
We'll go on then to point number 7.
Emyl sy'n mynd ar ôl?
Ia, just gadarnhau,
Just to I want to confirm that your emails are correct. They should all be in the same corporate form. Number 8, minutes of the authority. We've had a proposal that they're correct. Do we have a seconder? Anything arising from the minutes? If not, we look at the action log. Page 12 and 13, I think.
So ar dudalen 12,
It's on page 12. The recommendation is
I fod ar y rhestr, a wedyn ar gyfer plas Llanabwll, a'r diweddariad, ma' 'na ddiweddariad.
There's an update on Plas Llanabwll that Carter Jonas have now been appointed, and also a legal company has been appointed as well, and there'll be a further report from the head of property later on. Thank you. But it's still on the list. Number 10, which is to accept the report from the Auditor General for Wales. Over to Eros. Thank you. I've got a few slides to share for you. I'm just going to share my screen. Thank you for having a slot on the agenda this morning. This is a national report today that we published back in April. This was a review that was part of looking of a general review. I'm saying this because there's some implications to that with the way it's being presented to you today, different from some of the local work we've done. Because it concentrates more on the national picture, really. It does this through a national lens, looking at a wider perspective and at a governance model that the park is operating under. Also means that there's a wider audience for this report, there are things I'll be drawing attention to that are beyond the ability of the parks to deal with directly, and those are messages for Welsh Government. So there were 5 elements. First of all, we looked at the model and the governance structures. We looked at the responsibilities within these structures, looked at the governance culture, and also the infrastructure and the capacity with staffing to support effective governance. And finally, we looked at arrangements locally and nationally to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of governance. Before I jump into the findings, I'll just wait a little bit on the next slide. We completed the fieldwork between January and July. I'm sure you can appreciate the extent of the evidence, or the interviews we did and the observations. We also did a survey, and the nature of the evidence reflects the fact that this is a national review. What I want to stress here is that the standards we stick to means that there's nothing that you read in this report that will be based on just one source of evidence. All the themes that we report on are always corroborated by more than one source. With the key findings, the report has been structured around 7 key areas. First of all, we describe the governance model generally, and we note how this works. We talk about the clarity of the structures across the 3 parks and how that helps you to achieve against your responsibilities. Secondly, each of the 3 parks realizes the value of collaboration, and we got positive relationships with the way that Eryri and Pembrokeshire work together. But looking at the bigger picture and how the parks fit into the context, we also draw attention to the fact that there are challenges to do with governing through structures. We've heard time and time again about the importance of influencing, and we've heard about it this morning again when we were talking about responding to climate change. And that ability to influence is important to manage the challenges facing the national parks. There are risks that that influence is curtailed a little bit through the limited roles that the parks have got on the CJCs and corporate committees. With administration, we refer to the wide range of meetings and committees and requirements to report that are statutory, and that has quite an effect on the capacity of officers. Parks have to report back on quite substantial things, and you have to prepare detailed financial statements. So even though the budget is much smaller than the local authorities, so with regards to governance, any time taken to do governance work takes capacity from other things that need to be done. Another finding concentrates on how inconsistent the way councillors are appointed to sit on the parks. The implications of that is that about 1/3 of the elected members across the 3 parks now, they don't represent council wards that sit within the borders of the national park. So they haven't got the skills and experience that will help to govern in the park. And some members told us that they're only there to make the numbers up, or because nobody else wants to be there. And what all this means is that you need to refer capacity and resources of officers to help people. Again, I'm talking about the model and the risks that come because of that model. It's not a review of individual members, nor of the decisions that you've taken. as an authority. But from our point of view, the helicopter view, if you like, when you consider some of the strengths of the governance model on paper, which is that they combine strategic expertise and national perspectives, etc., with local democracy, doesn't always happen really, because there's always an element of lottery as to who's sitting around the table making the decisions. In comparison, we talk about the fact that Welsh Government has a thorough process in place to appoint members, but having said that, there's a lack of clarity as to who is responsible for providing information and supporting new members, and continuous support can be a bit limited. And then the implications of that is that people feel isolated and not supported in their role, and they don't feel that they can put their skills to work. So another key finding looks at to what extent the members are held to account for their contribution. We recognise that Welsh Government has a process to try and get that feedback about performance annually, but at the same time, it's not a practice that's always done consistently. And again, the contribution of county councillors isn't always evaluated either, and that's important because that could help to identify the training needs or support needs and devise some kind of program for training in the future, and to have accountability in future, and to do with value for money that's spent on members across the 3 parks. The last part of the report shows the strengths on paper of the model and how these play out practically. And considering what we're drawing attention to in the report, we're calling on Welsh Government to review where the model is delivering what was intended. With the recommendations, there are 4 recommendations. The first concentrates on giving guidance to people. This is just giving guidance to, it doesn't mean treating members differently or anything like that. It just means that Welsh Government and the park come together to define and to agree on who's doing what to help members to do their role. The second recommendation is to support nominating councillors to sit on Park Authority. We proposed that they come together with the Welsh Government and the WLGA to look at the protocol that's in place to support the process for nominating members and see if it's still fit for purpose. The third recommendation is to do with improving accountability for members. We proposed that Welsh Government, the parks and the councils should work together to develop an accountability framework for all members of parks, looking at the contributions. And finally, as I said, because of what we've identified, we proposed that Welsh Government reviews whether the model is delivering what was intended. So I hope that that short presentation has been useful to you. I'm sure that you don't want to hear more from me. I think maybe it's more interesting to hear how the officers will respond. Changing translation.
Thank you, Euros. Usually I would for the first time I found myself, there's nothing new here in the 3 first recommendations. You know, we've discussed these for many years now. There is a response form which has been prepared by me, and I take responsibility for it. It has been sent by email. It was sent out last week, on Monday, sorry. But it will be sent to you formally in the Performance and Resources Committee next month. So I think that the 3 first recommendations in the hands of other people, and I think that we would agree with that. What I'm not happy with is the 4th recommendation, because it is, as stated in his presentation, it's all based on evidence, but I don't see any evidence in the report to say that this model doesn't work. There are matters, yes, but the model doesn't work. Over the past 15 years, I've worked on the Marston report. I worked with Marston from Cardiff University who presented recommendations, and I worked with David Ellis Thomas as well, chairing the Landscape Review Committee. And both pieces of work came back saying that the model was okay as it was. And then the last part of David Ellis Thomas's report looked at models across the world and across Europe specifically. So I'm not happy with that recommendation, but I'll let you as members to discuss it either today or in the committee next month. But there are some opportunities. What we need to look at is the governance. We need to look around this table, not just around this table across the 3 boards, but there are the wider implications. There are deficits, in how we respond to matters in a public manner with the management of rural landscapes. That is it too detailed review for the size of the authority that we're in? And we're also quite different to the police and the fire and rescue services, where they can change their funding streams due to the governance systems. They can set a higher levy on residents, but we don't have that powers. So I'll stop there before I get the sack. Do we want to discuss it, or are we going to? So we leave it to the Performance and Resources Committee? I think it'd be useful to discuss it today, just to get people's feedback on it, and so we can give the authorities feedback on this. So it would be good to hear members' views now. Okay, we'll open it to the floor then. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Do you want 5 minutes to consider the authority's response in draft form? Yes? I know that people are still reading it. So we'll just give people a few minutes to look through it. Everybody have an opportunity to look through it? But I've got a question. It's more to the chief executive, really. These responses, they are very useful. I wouldn't disagree with them. With improving, I just wanted to check something. It's my check by my ignorance, really. Obviously, we need people. Is there room here for members, with to have a leadership on this matter? Who would lead us on the to set up a framework for members. Would it be a Welsh Government? Would it be the WRG, really? To improve the accountability, just so, to improve from past experiences. We need to consider you all as equals, as members. Everybody needs to be treated equally. But there is a process, a technical process of reporting back to the government on performance each year. The performance across the 4 years is considered by the minister before appointing for the next period. And we don't have that in the local authorities. I think that's what it's referring to. What local authorities say that we have elections every 4 years. That's something between the WRG and Welsh Government and consulting with us. Because we don't appoint you. You're given to us, as they would say. So it's a difficult situation for us. The first 3 recommendations, we are okay, but I would like, as you as members, whichever way you're appointed, would be able to show, yes, we do add value. Thank you. Brian.
I found the report very interesting. I think the question to me, and it's not clear, and it may just be I haven't read it properly, or it may be it requires some greater clarity. It's a question of reviewing of the government arrangement. That's the primary situation for the governance arrangements, as I understand it, set out in legislation. Criticism seemed to be coming through more, not in terms of the primacy of the structure, in terms of the balance between local authorities and national members. It seems to be more about the implementation of both of those, both in relation to support and training, and in the case of local members, how they're selected in relation to, the park and expertise. But that's more to do with implementation, in my opinion, rather than actually fundamentally the way that the governance structure works. I think the freedom to choose how that government, once you've gone past that point, how we do that in relation to whether we have, a plethora of committees or just the few committees that we have in this authority, comes down to a number of different matters in terms of how best to manage that. And I think leaving that to local decision is probably a better way to go, because the 3 parks are very different in their makeup and their geography and all the rest of it. So I'm not clear in my mind whether Audit Wales are looking at fundamentally the governance and the balance between local and national, whether they're looking at purely the implementation of what we have in terms of the structure as it's laid out currently in legislation, as I understand it.
I think that the report could be clearer on this, yes. Paragraph 22 does confirm that the structure of the committees, the balance is okay. But the skills that you bring around the board in a strategic manner to scrutinize everything, that's the thing that's the subject of it, even though it doesn't state it out clearly in the document. It's important to state that the Welsh Labour's manifesto will include something on this, on governance, and on the fire and rescue service. So there's a different situation between the 2 bodies, because the only thing you have with the fire service is a membership. Yes. There's no national appointments to bring expertise in. So Audit Wales went into the fire service and they saw that there was a lack of challenge there and a lack of expertise there. But I don't see any reason to change it here. Maybe the size of the authority will come into question. Is it too large, or don't we have enough members? I think there'll be more changes to the fire service than to us, really. Does anybody else like to come in? Okay. Does anyone like to propose? So the response, the authority response, I was a bit uncomfortable filling it in myself because you're the organisation. That's why I've brought it back to. That's why I'm going to take it back to the resources committee just to word it correctly. But I haven't picked up any comments. I haven't picked up any comments where would you like to change anything. I'm of the same opinion now. I haven't seen anything. I haven't received any comments who want to change the recommendation. So it will be presented before Performance and Resources Committee to be adopted formally. But we won't do it here today. No, we won't do it now. So I'll pass it on to the. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item 11. The finance officer for a statement for 21-22 in the first instance. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your appointment. When you said the most important man in the room, I didn't expect it to be referring to me. Usually, I'd start the presentation of the final account by saying it's been a pleasure to present them to you. But I think that Sian would say that it'd be a relief to be In the middle of a presentation. No. There was Rachel, if you could carry on, please, then we'll open up to questions. Yes, thank you. To say it's very important that the draft goes through the review process before it's presented to us to be inspected. I understand there was quite a few changes in the finance team last year, so hopefully this will be better as we move forward. But it is very important that the draft does go through a review process before being presented, because we need to make note of all the notes that we pick up and agree what the correction is, and then review this. So reducing the number of these minor matters will improve effectiveness and lead to a quicker audit process. And then the price of asset, and this is what really delayed the process. That asks that the asset worth is the asset worth in the report corresponds with the market value. So the authority needs to review the prices of all its assets each 2 years. Well, we saw that the work papers, when we reviewed the price of the assets, we saw that the work conducted on pricing the assets wasn't of standard. There was different papers didn't correspond with each other. There were pieces of paper lost. So there's quite a bit of toing and froing between us and the finance officer and the surveyor in order to gather the necessary evidence. So in the end, we received enough evidence to place a value on some of the assets, but unfortunately, by being unable to gather evidence on the number of assets, we still had a number of concerns about the value of some of the set on some of the assets. The depreciated value and cost was something quite specific to the public sector, which is required by the SIPFA code. And it became evident that this methodology hadn't been used by the first surveyor. So the price or the value given on the market value didn't correspond with this code. So they were asked to revalue the asset, and unfortunately they didn't have the capacity to conduct the work. But now new surveyors have been appointed, and the value they've given on the asset do correspond with the SIPFA code. And these adaptations have been made to the accounts, and everything has been followed through in a correct manner by now. But I can't emphasize enough how much extra time this took with all the toing and froing with the surveyors, and we all had to follow up this work, myself and the finance team, to complete this extra work. I don't have the final figures, but all this extra time will have an effect on the auditing fee. A number of other matters are noted in Appendix 3, and I'll take questions at the end. But I am pleased that we've reached where we can present the accounts, and hopefully that the work conducted on these accounts will improve things as we move forward. I think we aim to finish the accounts for 22-23 over the summer, but 23-24 will have to wait until the new year, since we have another set of 23-24 accounts which have been presented to be reviewed. But I'd like to thank Sian, David, Edward, Dewi, and all the finance team for working in a constructive manner with us through the whole audit process. It was a difficult audit, but I'm pleased that we've reached where we are today. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you. Right. Yes, I'm happy. Questions, Ivar? Just a point of explanation, really. On page 6 of the report, 48 in the agenda today, expenditure 330 increase in net REFCUS total spend. What is REFCUS, please? I'm just looking for it now. REFCUS, it's an abbreviation of revenue, expenditure, funding, capital, and the statute. It's where you spend. Expenditure is capital in nature, but it isn't included in the statement. It may be put against an asset which isn't in the statement, which isn't owned by the PAC. So I don't know, Sian, do you have an example you can think of? I think of examples from local authorities, but not on specific to the PAC. It's expenditure, capital spend on the landowner's land, but we spend the money on their behalf because it corresponds with what we need to do as a PAC. But why has there been an increase? Sure, we've received grants for that type of work. I think that's most likely what's happened here. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else have a question? No? So we'll move to a vote. So we'll take all 3 recommendations together. 3 recommendations together. Would anyone like to propose? Ivar and the seconder. Is everybody in favour? Carried. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to number 12 on the agenda, which is appointment of members to serve on committees and so on. Yes, if you could take us through then, who is on what?
Pwysgar safonau, mae cyfnod Hatfi'n dod I ben ar y
So it's coming to an end on the 9th of December this year. The rest are independent members, so that's a separate matter. You've now got, I suggest that we wait until Sarah it was, term comes to an end. The appeals panel, will the appeals panel, they are elected by the standards, members of the standards committee. So all the members are on the members committee, 4 members on some local committee, and there's one vacancy there. Sorry, I can't find the pages. For information, you can change them as you like, but this is just for information. So we don't need to fill that vacancy today, do we? Does anybody want to nominate themselves? Or shall we check that everybody's happy to stay on it? Ifor Glyn, are you happy to stay on this committee? Elwyn Edwards? Yes, fine. So what about the vacancy then? From members of local authorities. Einir, good. Then Welsh Government, Sarah at the moment. Happy to stay or to stand down, whatever, if other people want to step in. The union then. Then the Ysgwrn Board, Elfed and Elwyn at present. And Naomi from Welsh Government. Are you all happy with that? Plas Tan y Bwlch Management Board. And there's a vacancy there. And the chair and vice chair sit on this as well. I propose Elfed as the local member. Yeah, well, I'm on the 2 as well. So I think I've got too many commitments. But you are the local member. Okay, I'll do my best.
Elwyn Edwards, Ifor Glyn Lloyd and June Jones. Brian.
This was the advisory committee. Elwyn, Ifor and June. And Brian. Elwyn, happy? Ifor,
June Jones.
June Jones,
Brian Angel.
Brian Angel. All happy to stay on this.
Forum
Forum Eryri next. Meet 4 times a year. Chair, Vice Chair, and then local authority appointees. Joe Nuttall, are you happy to stay on this? Great.
Brian Angel ar Llywodraeth mae o'n iawn.
And Brian Angel on behalf of the Welsh Government. So I think we should have somebody from Gwynedd really to get a balance. And when I think
Mae o'n. Forum Unigedd Lleol.
local access forums 4 times a year.
John Pugh.
John Pugh Roberts from the south area
Tim Jones.
and Tim Jones from the northern area.
Is Pwyllgor Cynllunio.
Then strategic planning subcommittee. It depends on the meeting and who's available. No. No, we need to elect somebody formally for the subcommittee. And we've got to select either the chair, the vice chair, or the chair of the Planning and Access Committee. That's what that means. And then following that, there'll be a form to sign, to send back. Okay, so chair of the planning. No, you select one of those 3. I propose that the chair attends these. No, the chair of the authority should represent us on this committee. No, it's one of the 3 that you want. Okay, if you're happy with that. Unless there's somebody else who's interested. I think you need to show hands here. Are you all in favour with the chair representing you on this committee? Anybody against? Carried.
Right, and you have 7, yeah?
Next one, task and finish groups and steering groups. Asset subgroups, June Jones, Ifor Glyn, Meryl Roberts, Brian Angel and Tim Jones. And 1 vacancy. June, happy to carry on? Ifor, Meryl, Brian and Tim. This is the assets subgroup. And there's a vacancy. Anybody interested?
Yeah. Cool. Champion? Right, group lliwio wan.
Now steering group, carbon account steering group, John Pugh, Brian Angel and Tim Jones. Does anybody want to join them? We've got discretion to add to those numbers. And Naomi can be added to that.
Iawn. Wan, enwau lleoedd wan, mae gennych chi...
Now the place name steering group, Elwyn, June and Dilwyn. Just thinking back to the carbon group, I think you should declare that you're happy to extend it to 4 members. We need to do that formally, I think. Thank you. Then the Welsh place names. Elwyn, June and Dilwyn. And I'd like to congratulate the officers on the work they've done with names of lakes and so on. It's been quite an eye-opener. Trawsfynydd site stakeholder group. Elfed here. Louise Hughes has disappeared, but she needs to come back in. There was a meeting in the chat that she was coming back on an iPad.
Dyma hi, ie.
Dyma hi.
So dyma ni.
Iawn, da ni nôl, Sian Lwch.
Okay, Joint Council for Wales. Is Louise there?
Sorry, I'm trying to get the interpretation sorted on my phone. I'm having a real problem with my iPad again. I probably need a new one. So sorry, what was that, Chair?
Ar cyd Cyngor Cymru.
The Joint Council for Wales, you sit on that. Are you happy?
Joint Council for Wales. Are you still willing to stand for that?
No, not really, no. Sorry.
Okay. Right. Right, can you rhywun newydd ta?
Can we have a proposer for somebody else? It's with the HR officer. With the WLGA thing. So usually an officer and a member goes, sometimes just an officer. They don't meet very often.
WLG.
Ifor dangos ydw?
Na, just gofyn cwestiwn, dyn nhw'n wneud efo'r WLG? Hefo WLG. Okay.
Sa rhywun yn ywydus?
Anybody want to go on this?
Da ni o, illa fydd yr aelod newydd yn...
Ie. Dwi'n am yn... Dwi'n gofynion ddim yn ychal iawn efo.
It's not very onerous.
Cymru, ond, ie. Wel, os yma'n ddoi cael...
But it would be wise to have a name, I think. Can we have a name? Yes, I'll do it. I don't know what it is. Well, you'll learn.
Tim Jones, yeah? Rhif 3.
So the next one, Alliance? No, Campaign for National Parks. Alliance for Welsh Designated Landscapes, Tim. Welsh WLG, Dilwyn Roberts. Happy to carry on? Or does anybody else want to?
Sorry about it. Diolch yn fawr. Penllyn y Sarnau, Louise.
Penllyn y Sarnau, SAC, Louise.
Yeah. Iawn.
Eryri Transport Parking and Active Travel Group, vacancy. Just to give you some background, it used to be called the Green something. They meet every, say, 4 months with local members. And the project is to do with North Eryri, and they want input from
Yeah.
Somebody saying they're happy to be reserve if June can't go.
June ag Einir os ti...
So June and Einir for that then.
Fforwms strategol rhaglen yn ysynu...
Energy Islands Programme Strategic Forum, Elfed.
A wedyn, da ni'n dod yn ôl...
And then the V-Biosphere Partnership, Louise.
Iawn.
A wedyn mae gynna i...
And then Cambrian Coast Railway Liaison Conference, Meryl and Delyth in reserve.
Oh, sorry, Meryl. Oh, sorry. Delyth Nafis? Da iawn. Yna ni, ia? Ie. Mae'n bed. Anyone yn mynd i...
Thank you.
Oh, shit. Siarad sy'n gyfrifo, ia. Gosod i chi siarad.
So we're now over to Sharon. Thank you. Sharon, sorry. But first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present the annual report to you today. As you remember, this is the second statutory report that is part of legislation now, where we have to present a report about the committee's work. And it gives me pleasure as chair to do so. I'm not going to go through the report. It summarizes for you the main matters that we've been dealing with over the year. But I'd like to pick up on one or two things and expand on them. First of all, to remind ourselves that membership over the last 2 years has changed as well. And now it's not just nominations like you've done today, but also lay members as well, or independent members. And that's 3 and 3, so half and half. We had a new independent member this year, starting in April, which was Mr. Mark Jones, who used to be a senior manager in North Wales Police. And I think we're very pleased to have Mark on board because he's got extensive experience. And I'm sure he'll be a great asset to your committee for the coming years. Again, I'd like to congratulate the authority once again this year on the important elements that we do look at, which is high standards of behaviour. We've looked at complaints, of course, and I can tell you that any serious complaints tends to go up to the Ombudsman, but nothing had to go to the Ombudsman this time. So that's positive. The national parks, the rural ones, tend to get fewer complaints, but this authority, I'm not sure if it's on the top or the bottom with regards to complaints, but in a good place anyway. And they tend to be just minor complaints. We also have a monitoring report from your team. And again, I want to congratulate the authority about how well that team monitoring complaints is doing. Very low number of complaints. And again, some people could say perhaps people don't want to make a complaint, but we still think it's a positive thing. That team will pick up on things and will follow up on any complaints, as you well know. And that's over the period I've been with the committee. And it shows the value, I think, that lessons have been learned. So the complaints that come in, as you can imagine, looking at the previous year, half of them are to do with planning. A lot of them just lack of thought, really, and not going back in time to the person who made the complaint. So your team does follow up on things. So I don't think that we can see any negative patterns at all. I think there was one issue with staffing problems, and we can see patterns like that elsewhere, and lack of resources. One of the comments I want to make, just to show you, looking at, we don't just look at policies or have reports in committees. We're trying to follow through and looking to see if the processes work. There's no point having a policy on paper if it doesn't work properly. Some of you will remember that I observed and scrutinized two committees, a planning committee and a resources committee, and I reported through Iwan Jones on my findings. And again, I want to congratulate you. The process for declaring interest worked well, but also what was positive, I could see a planning committee where I could observe from Zoom, and I could imagine how the public would see the process. And I think that was a valuable process for me. And the officers who were presenting planning cases and the actual applicant were given fair play and the same fair play. So I reported on that, and that was a positive thing. The only thing was the technical elements had been very clumsy. I felt quite dizzy leaving that meeting, but today has been much better. But that day it wasn't easy. And that was the type of experience that a member of the public would have had. So it wasn't a very pleasant experience. But again, to be positive, you will see as well that the Standards Committee was given the chance to try out the equipment that you're putting in the main offices in our last meeting. And there were some glitches, but I hope that the committee fed back to the team to improve things. And so again, the circle was closed. We could see any problems and we could see they were being dealt with. Just to finish, unless you've got any questions, for the coming year, I think we've asked Iwan if we can look at how something is working in some system in a committee. Go there by. One thing that's not on the report, we are members of the Wales Standards Committees, where we meet with all the other authorities and other parks. And that's good practice, I believe. and gives us a chance to discuss with the parks as well and see their perspective. So I'll finish there. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Ie, dwi'n nodi beth ydych chi ddeud, Sharon. Da ni wedi bod yn chwilio am achos ers mwy na blwyddyn, i ddweud y gwir. Ond os oes ymatab lle mae'n anodd bod yna aelodau cyngor Gwynedd neu Conwy yn defnyddio'r goddefyd a sydd wedi cael ei roi gan y Pwyllgor Safona yna. Mi fyddan ni'n gwahodd aelodau o Pwyllgor Safona i edrych ar y Pwyllgor yna.
And the only other thing that I wanted to add was I noticed on the paper, which when we're coming to item 12, the 8th of December, I'd like to thank you officially for the 9 years of service that you've given us, and thank you very much. You've been very professional, and I have appreciated your work with the Standards Committee. Can I just respond to that? I'd like to thank you for your kind words. And I'd also like to thought that I have enjoyed my period with you, I must say. And it is, you need new blood now, because my face has become too old for the job now. Thank you very much. I'd like to also say thank you very much, Sharon, and we will see you in other committees. And they're on mute now, unfortunately. Oh. There we go. It's okay now. I can hear them now. Oh, they're back on mute, unfortunately. And we're on. So we'll approve. Would anyone like to approve and agree on the content? Yes. Would you like to show that you approve the report? Okay, thank you very much. Next is the annual report by the Head of Administration and Customer Care. Who's taking this? Thank you very much. I'll put a mic in front of us. I don't have a mic in front of me. Oh, yes, I've got a mic. Great. In the first instance, I'd like to congratulate the Chair and the Vice Chair on their appointments. Now, on to the report. It's the annual governance report, which reports on the main governance matters over the financial year 2023-24. I have one correction to make, and that's in part 6, which starts on page 214. The date that I've got there is incorrect. Look, we're looking on to this financial year. That's the part 6. So the title should be Governance Matters, Significant Governance Issues and Actions Proposed for 24-25. There's a correction there. If you can make a note of that, please. So I welcome any comments or questions you have on the statement. And if you're happy, once we've changed the part, I would like to ask you to approve the statement so that it can be included as part of the final statement of accounts for 23-24, when those will be presented to you in due course. Thank you very much. And there's a recommendation to discuss and approve the contents of the report. Would anyone like to propose or make any recommendation? Oh, no. There's a proposal and a seconder. Can you please show that you agree? And we move on now to the corporate work programme and the report by the Director of Corporate Services. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're all familiar with the corporate work programme. You adopted it last year. You've received a progress report in the performance, and this is the final step in this year for 23-24 to examine and discuss the attached corporate work programme. In the previous meetings, have adopted the new corporate work for this year. The usual process is to go through it page by page. So we'll start on 222. There's a difference between the English version and the Welsh version. Is there? No. And when it says page 1 on the side of the corporate, so maybe we should just follow that so that we don't have any confusion between the Welsh and the English version. So we'll follow the page 1, page 2. So we'll start. Okay. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, page 5, page 6, 7, 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, there aren't any items on the following pages, on the next page. Page 17, page 18, page 19, page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23, page 24, page 25, page 26, page 27. Oh, I thought there was just a cough. Page 28, page 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. Well, we've finished the end of the corporate work programme. What you have there is the Welsh Government's remit letter, which gives details of how they all fit in to the different elements within the corporate work programme. So we don't need to go through those. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. So the recommendation is to to accept. So can you please show that you accept this report? Thank you. So we'll move on to item 16, the carbon strategy. Director of Planning and Land Management will present this report. Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to go through this report. You have discussed it already in our work committee and it hasn't changed. A few minor changes. I've referred to them in the report, so you are aware of its content. And I referred to the contents to answer the question by the member of the public this morning. So I'd just like you to adopt the strategy and then to review it on an annual basis and to review any progress. So thank you very much. I propose that we adopt it and seconded it. Everyone in favour? That has been carried. So we'll move on to the members' attendance on 296. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is presented for your information only. You see that those figures have showed how everyone's performed individually on paragraph 2. The main message with regards to attendance, if you look at 2023-24, there has been an increase compared to the previous 2 years. Slightly lower than 2022-2021, but in general, the attendance there aren't any problems with the presence at meetings.
Wel, mae ar dy ben blwyddyn.
Sut mae'n digwydd? Gai ymddiheuro unwaith eto. Ie, mae'n siŵr newid y chenwch chi.
We'll move on to item 18. No, 17. No, that was 17. No, we move on to 18. Welsh Language Standards, Head of Administration and Customer Care. So this report is our annual monitoring report and how we implement our Welsh Language Standards. We have a statutory requirement to publish this by the end of June. So part 2 in the report gives you a summary on the executive summary, and this which states the main matters which have arisen during the year. Page 3 reports on our delivery standards. And lastly, the attachment gives you an outline on the number of members of staff we have to speak Welsh on each site and each department. So that's the content of this report. I welcome any questions or any comments that you'd like to give on the report. But our recommendation is that you approve the report and authorize us to publish it on the authority's website. Would anyone like to make any comments on this? I would like to recommend, I propose that we approve it. Is everyone in favour? Yes, that's carried. The Concentrary Annual Monitoring Report 2023 is next. Before Angela starts her presentation, I would like to apologise to those of you who received the Welsh only reports. There is an English version. So just apologies for the confusion with the language of the report. Some have only received the English only version. So thank you, and congratulations to the chair and vice chair on the appointments this morning. Just as you can see, simply you have the report in front of you. I hope you've had the opportunity to scan through it, through the 50 pages which are there. Yeah, it's the third annual report, and the partnership have sent their progress reporter to us, and through Forum Eryri, who meet each quarter. That's what where we hear about the incredible work which happens across the area, and the organisation. Those organisations also show how they move the Cynllun Eryri forward. It shows that there has been good progress against each one of the headings in the plan. As you can see, there's a system of traffic lights which measure all the outcomes. It's worth noting some progress, especially the work on the well-being and celebrating language and culture. It's quite innovative, the work that's happening in those sectors, and I'm very grateful to all the officers within the authority who are moving that work forward. But there's also work to be done on all the outcomes, especially when we look at the Welsh Government decisions on the sustainable farming scheme, and also the work that we're starting to do now. Well, we're starting to move forward towards setting guidelines in place for those who give permission to large events across Eryri. So there's quite a bit of work which is just starting, due to the situation and then the climate that we live in at the moment. And I've made a note in the report that next year is when we'll start to review Cynllun Eryri. I can't believe that we're in that position already. So we'll need to consider really next year which one of the actions we will take forward with us to the new plan. And there'll be quite a bit of work next year through 2024 to consider what our priorities are on objectives are on the management plan as we move forward into the next 5-year cycle. So just to forewarn you really that there'll be quite a bit of work to be done on this next year. And just one more thing really to make a note of. I'd like to thank all our partners for all the cooperation that happens across the area. It's fantastic to see that. And as you've made the note of several times, as an authority, we can't move our work forward without the cooperation of all our partners. So it's great to see a number of them here, and more of them really, and a part of Forum Eryri and taking part in the development of the programme as we move forward. I won't go into it in detail, but if you have any questions on anything, I'm more than happy to take questions and explain more about any aspect of the report. So this report, if you approve it, will go up on the website after the meeting today so that everyone can see it there as well. Does anybody have any questions or have any comments for Angela? No? No one? So the recommendation is to make a note of the progress so far, and the second is to provide further recommendations regarding the format of the annual monitoring report for 2024. So then I'd like to thank all the people who have been part of this. I know that it's a very interesting committee to attend. Yes. Anyone? Show of hands, please. Thank you. That has been carried. So move on. This is for information, really. Working. No, then we'd like to. Meryl and Anwen for the members working group on the 17th of April. So we'll move on now to the meeting of other organisations. Meeting of other organisations, where members have represented the authority on other committees. Does anyone have any reports? Two meetings recently because Transport Wales are trying to cut the number of trains. Two in the morning and two in the afternoon. There was an emergency meeting which is on. This is an ongoing matter. Thank you. We move on to item 22. The minutes of the Performance and Resources Committee on the 20th of March. Everyone happy with those? Any questions? Okay. Can you please show a show of hands, please? Thank you. And then the next one is the minutes of the Standards Committee, which was held on the 26th of April, 2024. There's a copy enclosed. Dilwyn proposes. Can we have a show of hands for this as well? Okay. And just to remind members that the PLAS committee will meet after lunch. What time does it start? 1:15. I'd like to thank you from the chair. In this last authority meeting, I'd like to thank Emyr for all his work. And I hope that we will be able to appoint someone into his post in due course. And I'd like to thank Anwen for her work as well, because when I first started on the pike, I was on the phone every minute with her. She's been very happy to help me. Thank you very much.
Yeah.